Tonight on Carolina News, murder mystery. A man found dead this weekend is leaving police with more questions than answers. We have the latest coming up. End of an era. Today, President Obama began his visit to Cuba, becoming the first U.S. president to visit the country in recent history. Tonight, we'll tell you what this means for American-Cuban diplomacy. And going green. This weekend, Columbia celebrated St. Patrick's Day, bringing the luck of the Irish to the capital city. We've got the sights and sounds from 5 Points. Carolina News starts right now.
Live from the capital city, Carolina News brings you your news first. With breaking news and in-depth reporting. Up-to-the-minute weather. And all your sports news and highlights. It's all here, now, on Carolina News.
Hello and welcome to Carolina News. I'm Allison Sloway.
Good afternoon and thanks for joining us. I'm Reese Funderbert. Columbia police are looking for any leads in a connection to a shooting death in 5 Points early Sunday morning. A man was found dead in a car outside of Food Lion. Gabrielle Ahrens has been looking into this story all day and joins us with the latest in the newsroom.
Thank you, Reese. Well, police have identified a victim in the shooting and are looking at security video from cameras in the area to determine what happened that night. All of this follows the large St. Patrick's Day festival that took place earlier on Saturday, where police flooded the area. The victim is identified as 22-year-old Levy Michael Happy of Prosperity. We know he is not a student at USC, and it is unclear if he was at the St. Patty's Festival earlier in the day. The 34th annual festival colored the streets of 5 Points in green, and police could be seen out in full force. After the crowds had dispersed, early Sunday morning is when police were dispatched to the area, along with EMS when Happy was found unresponsive. EMS personnel pronounced him dead at the scene. CPD spokeswoman Jennifer Timmons says they are working to determine if the case is a murder, an accident, or a suicide. This raises the question about safety in 5 Points once again after an 18-year-old University of South Carolina student was shot just 2 years ago. Local businesses like Ultra Tan are very concerned.
Normally, I don't see that much police presence, working here every day in 5 Points. I think that having more would be better. It would prevent a lot of this stuff happening.
That feeling is mirrored on campus as well.
I know there's a police presence, but you don't honestly really physically see it, and so you're just kind of scared, always looking over my shoulder, don't want to be there by myself. But yeah, it was definitely a scary end to St. Pat's.
5 Points remains on edge once again as they wait for answers. We reached out to the Columbia Police Department, who says there's nothing new at this time. Investigators continue to locate and review surveillance video for now. Back to you in the studio.
Thanks, Gabby. It's a sight many Cubans thought they would never see, an American president touching down on Cuban soil. However, as Scott McLean tells us, President Obama's trip this week is more than just a few photo ops.
It's a moment many Cubans thought would never come. A sitting U.S. president on a diplomatic trip to Cuba. Today, the president attended a wreath-laying ceremony at the Jose Marti Memorial, the man who led the fight for Cuban independence from Spain more than a century ago. Then a face-to-face meeting with President Raul Castro before a state dinner planned this evening.
This is a historic visit, and it's a historic opportunity to engage directly with the Cuban people.
Almost immediately after landing, the president tweeted that he's looking forward to meeting and hearing from the Cuban people. Among the first was Cardinal Ortega, a man once imprisoned in Cuba for his Catholic faith, who played a critical role in negotiations between Cuba and the United States. But the historic day was not without protest. Female family members of jailed Cuban dissidents, dressed in all white, were detained in Havana just hours before the president arrived.
What an affront to the presidential visit that the ladies in white's simple little peaceful march yesterday had to be interrupted by the thuggery of the Cuban oppressive forces.
And there were also demonstrations in Miami, home to the largest population of Cuban exiles. A reminder that not everyone believes that this new relationship will bring meaningful change. In Havana, I'm Scott McLean.
President Obama and his family will remain in Cuba through tomorrow, returning to U.S. later this week. Well, it may be spring, but it sure didn't feel like it this morning. It was a little more cold than usual. Our weather specialist, Kevin Smart, is at Colonial Life Arena. Kevin, is this cold weather going to stick around?
This cold weather won't be around for much longer, but if you're headed to the Gamecocks men's basketball game tonight, you better bring a coat. Temperatures are going to be in the low 50s for the 9 p.m. tip-off. The skies will remain clear for the first part of the week, bringing temperatures back into the 80s by Thursday. We do have some potential for some severe weather to move through the Midlands on Friday, which will bring temperatures back down into the low 60s for the weekend. Be sure to stay with us. I'll have more on the severe weather we can expect later on.
A protester was sucker punched at Donald Trump's rally in Arizona on Saturday. Video footage shows a Trump supporter kicking and punching Brian Sanders while he was being escorted out. Sanders spent the night in a Tucson hospital after he says he was stomped on his ribcage and his back. After he fell to the ground, Trump said he claimed the attacker was offended by the protester wearing the KKK outfit, but Sanders said he had nothing to do with that protester. Sanders claimed he went to the rally because of what he called Trump's fascism, racism, and his attitude towards women. Donald Trump's sister, Federal Appeals Circuit Court Judge Mary Ann Trump Barry, received a threatening letter on Friday. Trump Barry received her letter just one day after Eric Trump, Donald Trump's son, was sent a similar threat. The incident is currently under investigation by the Secret Service and FBI. It is unknown whether the two letters are from the same person or not. Donald Trump's representatives did not immediately respond to a request for comment.
Anti-Trump Republicans are desperate to stop the billionaire from becoming the Republican nominee. They have come up with a new plan they hope will halt his momentum before heading into the Arizona and the Utah primaries. Emily Huff has the latest.
The latest idea from the anti-Trump Republicans is called Split the Map. This strategy calls for the remaining Republican presidential candidates, John Kasich and Ted Cruz, to divide and conquer the East and the West. Kasich would focus all his resources and time in eastern states like New York, Delaware, Maryland, Pennsylvania, and Rhode Island, which have primaries at the end of April. Cruz would focus on western states like Arizona and Utah, who have primaries tomorrow, then Nebraska, Oregon, and South Dakota in the coming months. As ideal as this plan sounds, Kasich told CNN he is not thinking that way at this point.
I'm thinking that we're getting momentum and I can go east and I can go west. Think about California and me, okay? I've got positions that unify people.
A senior Cruz official told CNN the campaign had heard about the split the map strategy, but dismissed it as an unsuccessful plan. Dean Charles Bierbauer of the College of Information and Communication at the University of South Carolina says it is an act of desperation.
The Republican Party seems to be desperate for some kind of a plan that will preclude Trump getting to the convention and winning a first ballot nomination. Whether it's split the map or divide and conquer, whatever it might be, it's clear that some parts of the party are just looking for any alternative they can find.
Kasich reassured the Republican Party that he has the situation under control.
I don't know what's everybody so panicked about this. Everybody needs to take a little chill pill, to tell you the truth.
But with Trump taking the delegate lead at almost halfway to 1,237, it is easy to see why the anti-Trump Republicans are not as confident as Kasich. Emily Huff, Carolina News.
Utah and Arizona have primaries tomorrow, and the anti-Trump Republicans have high hopes that Cruz will hold his lead of 21 points in Utah. According to a poll by Desert News, we will keep you up to date on the outcomes of those primaries. The Congressional Civil Rights Pilgrimage ended at Mother Emanuel AME Church in Charleston on Sunday. The Civil Rights Pilgrimage was led by the Faith and Politics Institute and included U.S. Representative Jim Clyburn, U.S. Senator Tim Scott, and more than a dozen members of Congress. Here they spent 3 days in South Carolina exploring lessons about race, relations, and racial healing in the state. 69 people were killed by police during a peaceful protest in South Africa in 1965, and since then, the United Nations has come up with a way to allow open discussion about racial discrimination. Courtney Thornley reports how South Carolina is joining in.
The International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination has been recognized for 50 years, and South Carolina is promoting its efforts today.
It is time for us to move this conversation further. It is time for us to choose between being kind and being right.
This is the first year that South Carolina has hosted events that have coincided with End Racism Day. The South Carolina Human Affairs Commission says the goal is to prevent and eliminate discrimination and to promote dialogue among diverse people.
If we could, as many South Carolinians know, love one another, then we could do a lot to end race discrimination and all types of discrimination in our state.
South Carolina State Senator John Scott challenged South Carolinians to help bring more diversity.
It's your responsibility to bring that to light and to educate them. If we're going to move forward in this state and this nation, we've got to begin to look at things from more than one perspective.
Last year, racial discrimination hit home for South Carolinians.
And then that night, we witnessed perhaps the most horrific racial incident in modern times.
Since the 9 Mother Emanuel AME church members were shot and killed in June 2015, South Carolina has taken steps to promote harmony. The following month, crowds gathered on the South Carolina State House grounds to watch the Confederate flag come down. Many believe that it was a huge step in easing racial tensions, but South Carolina State Senator Joel Laurie thinks more needs to be done.
But we will not end racism by taking down a flag. We will end racism by the way we treat one another.
But they did agree on one thing.
We should do unto others as we would have others do unto us.
They hope this message will help end racial discrimination. Courtney Thornley, Carolina News.
Tonight, the Columbia Museum of Art is hosting a conversation about race, and the Nickelodeon Theater presents Watts Tax, a movie that commemorates the 1965 race riots in Watts, Los Angeles. North Korea fired 5 short-range missiles off the northeastern city of Hamhung this morning. South Korean Joint Chiefs of Staff are attributing the missile launch as a response to the annual springtime military exercises put on by the U.S. and South Korea. The United Nations has asked that North Korea refrain from all provocative tests, such as these missile tests. Launching the missiles put North Korea in clear violation of the UN Security Council. Former Richland County Councilman Kelvin Washington did not appear in court for his felony DUI charge originally scheduled for the morning. Washington's first appearance was excused by the 5th Circuit of Solicitor's Office, and his second appearance is now set for June 30th. Washington was charged with felony DUI after a car crash on Bluff Road on February 27th.
Big news today for tech lovers across the world. This afternoon, smartphone giant Apple announced its newest iPhone. The iPhone SE comes up with Apple's most up-to-date iOS software, also featuring a 4-inch display, making the phone significantly smaller than the previously announced iPhone 6. If you want to get your hands on the new iPhone, it will cost you $399, which is the cheapest any iPhone has been upon its unveiling. You will be able to pre-order the iPhone SE on March 24th. Coming up next, find out how you can stay safe in Columbia's famously hot weather.